So let's start then. Everybody understand me well? Great. So this is the last session of today, last of the concurrent sessions, and we're here with a small panel on branding. And yeah, the structure today will be that I'll give a short introduction on the work I'm doing at UCL in London. So it's about branding and it's brand equity in journal publishing. Yeah, it's a rather short explanation and some slides on my work there, and then we're going to have a discussion with David Crotty of OUP and Mark Johnson of PLOS. And if there are any questions or something, like just raise your hands. We're like in a small room here. We can just have an open discussion on this whole topic. If there is anything too quick on the slides, then just stop me there. I hope we have a long, good discussion on this, so I'd rather hold the slides at the beginning short. So yeah, please just raise your hands. And also speak into the microphone, I was advised to tell you. So what are brands? Brands, most people know these kind of logos and names and consider them as brands, basically. However, they are not actually brands, they're just the names of certain products or journals. What a brand is actually much more. So these are just the logos or the names, and additionally there are two other things that make up a whole for brands. This is a brand concept, which is basically the value proposition, and this is strongly connected. And this is the thing that the customer actually experiences when he interacts with a product. So it's like, is it open, for instance, or for a journal it is the time to publication, for instance. Is it how is the peer review process going? Is there a commenting service, something like what the reader, so to say, thinks of the brand when he interacts with it. So these three things as a whole make up a brand. You can think of it as a kind of an iceberg. Most people just see the logo at top of it and don't see the value proposition or the relational connection that is actually underlying a brand, the kind of intangible products or assets of a brand. And these are actually the most important things, because the logo, most people know these logos, but they interact actually with the value proposition and with the experience with the brand. So these are the actual things that a manager should look at and should manage to kind of drive the brand in a certain direction. Furthermore, for the understanding, for the discussion, there is a difference between corporate brands and product brands. In publishing will be obviously publishing houses as the corporate brands, and then publications as the product brands or the journals in this instance. That is so research found out there's actually the corporate brand is kind of a hierarchical product, so the corporate brand gives some strength to the product brand. We see it with cars or with consumer goods. That is not true in publishing. Mostly it's if there's OUP and then there's journals from OUP, mostly OUP doesn't give much strength to the journals actually, because the researchers interact just with the journals alone, and the journals are more like the relational things, and they interact in the community with the journal, and they often don't know what the actual publishing house is. So this is important to bear this in mind when a brand is managed, that it's not so much the corporate brand, but rather the product brand that is important. For researchers and brands, then we have to think of who's actually the target group, obviously, but in research, the interesting thing is there is one pool of people who interact with brands. These are the researchers. However, they don't act just as researchers, they act once as authors and then as readers. So this is the important thing when you look at brands. Researchers always see brands, or often see brands, differently when they interact as an author or when they interact as a reader. And as an author, or to start. As a reader, readers want to read less, but want to have the high or the best information they can get. So a brand in this instance kind of giving them or showing them the relevance and is reducing the risk. So when they have a search list of in a search and they have 10 articles, for instance, as a result, they see the brands and the brands shows them, okay, this is the relevant content for me and this is where I have to click first. So brands in this instance reduce the risk. And also brands are kind of imperfect substitutes in this instance because when a reader needs to get access to certain content because it's the most valuable content or it's the most up-to-date content, or he actually needs data from a certain article, he needs to access this article and can't just choose an article from a different journal. So a brand in this instance gives kind of imperfect substitutes. This switches with open access to the author, because in this instance then the author needs to pay the APC to actually get access to this journal, and with this we switch to the author side. How do authors interact with brands? Authors want to share knowledge and get recognition from it, and the first thing, sharing knowledge, is actually the actual purpose of a journal. So communicate the latest analysis or communicate some kind of findings that the researcher has, and getting recognition for this is, especially in recent years, has become way more important for the researcher. So getting recognition in terms of, like, for instance, the impact factor, most people know that. Kind of the impact factor is the substitute for the top tier brands. We see on the first slide the Cell, Nature, or Science. Researchers think they need to get access to this brand, they need to publish in these journals so that the brand transfers kind of the brand equity onto the researcher, onto the researcher's CV, so that they can tell themselves, tell other researchers, we have published in Nature, and therefore we are good researchers. Only after this, or only in lower impact research, so to say, the ease to publish, or so to say, the services become more and more important. And we see this with the rise of the mega journals, or with cascading journals, for instance, where services actually get more and more important, and it's not so much anymore the getting recognition for it, which will be some of the stuff we will discuss later on. And this leads us to one of the key theories here, that the network externalities looks more complicated than it actually is. We see that with the mega journals that they can raise their impact and their output. And this is so there's like the journal in the middle is kind of the intermediary, and then they have readers on one side and authors on the other side, and the journal interacts as a platform. And when a mega journal or a larger journal raises the amount of articles or submissions or output on the one side, it's likely that they raise the readers on the other side because there's more relevant content on this platform. And on the other hand, authors see, okay, there are many readers who actually read this journal, so they get attracted to actually submit to this journal. This is how megajournals, for instance, can grow both input, output, and readership. However, that does not apply to top-tier journals. With top-tier journals, when they, for instance, want to publish only the top 5 percentile of research, they cannot just raise their output or their articles they publish more and more, because at a certain point they would have to publish output or research that is below the actual 5% top percentile of research. And thus, a top-tier journal is actually, it's the exclusiveness of the top-tier journal that is actually important for driving readership in this instance. But we will discuss this later on a little bit. And this actually, the top tier, this kind of what is a top tier brand leads us to one of the key issues, that a brand is a kind of a substitute or synonymous as quality. There's on the one hand mechanistic quality, this is the services, And on the other hand, there is the quality of scientific research. Most importantly, unfortunately, it's at the moment mostly the impact factor that is synonymous for a high quality research. Though there are actually way more options or possibilities to assess what is scientific quality, both citation-based, based on the article, based on the journal. It can be based on the author. Actually, in the gray area are the more important aspects to, or more important measures of how to assess what is good research. Most important is the peer review, actually, because the peer review is the only one that's actually individually looking at the content and is assessing whether this content is is good for a proper journal or not. It doesn't only mean that it's kind of high impact journal or high impact content. It can also mean that it's just suitable for a certain journal because the journal addresses a certain research community, and therefore this content should be published in this journal. The problem with the impact factor, this is just one slide to indicate this again. On the left side, we see the citation distribution. Basically, we see there that there is a lot of interdisciplinarity between citations. So researchers from molecular or cell biology cite various other research subjects as well, and we definitely see that in the social sciences as well, that there's interdisciplinarity in the citations. And on the right side, we see the average impact factor and see that actually in the social sciences, for impact, the impact factor is not so much of use. And in the life sciences, the impact factor is higher than the actual average. And when we combine those two, or the key arguments of those two tables or data, we see that actually the impact factor as an overall measure is of no use in, for brands in general. So to conclude, all these different arguments, what publishers actually try to do, and this is kind of also a result of the research we did at UCL when we asked several publishers and researchers, that they either try to build a top-tier brand or a service-oriented platform. Both lead to higher brand equity, and brand equity basically is the revenue premium that a branded product gets compared with an unbranded counterpart. And an instance in between, when you don't create a service-oriented platform, neither a high-branded or high-impact brand, you sit kind of in between the fence or in between the chairs, and you don't actually get high brand equity from this. And and the lower impact brands, so to say, that actually serve kind of the research communities, these are merely identifiers of communities, so to say. We just coined this term, and so they bring together researchers from a certain research community, and there's no or not much interest of the researchers to actually interact with a lot of services or to actually get certain recognition from this. They basically just communicate over this journal. And this is actually what we see more and more, that this gets more important, also with the rise of mega journals again, that they just communicate over a certain kind, and the discoverability of the content gets more important rather than the recognition the researcher gets from this journal or from this brand. So the hypothesis so far in this stage of the research is that with the systematic changes that we see at the moment, this will definitely decrease or alter the brand equity that brands see at the moment. So especially with the open sciences, we had this before, that the need shifts, or the brand equity that actually was an instance for the readers at the beginning, shifts with open science measures to the author. Also, the rise of megajournals, it's changed a lot because their discoverability is more important. It's more important that the research is in one huge kind of pool, and the discoverability of the content is important for the certain readers, but it's not so much the recognition that a researcher gets when it's not the high impact content. Also, emerging research communities, especially from Asia, who changed a lot because they don't adhere to the measures or to the systems we know so far in the research communities, and furthermore the publishing platforms which kind of play into the assets of the mega journals or the new measures we see from mega journals. So far.